Hello everybody, welcome back to a new episode of D&D Creature Feature. This is the show where I read you a Dungeons & Dragons based creepypasta. And at the end of the video, you're going to get something from that creepypasta, like a monster, a magic item, a subclass, anything, for you to use in your own D&D games for absolutely free. But before we can dive into this unfortunately not so merry wintry tale, you're gonna have to know who these two people on screen are. Their names are Edgar and Valorie, and they're a pair of adopted siblings who research monsters together. Edgar is a chthonic tiefling College of Spirits bard, and Valorie is an infernal tiefling College of Lore bard. So without further ado, let's dive into this scary story. Cabin Fever. There was a very festive feeling in the air. The sun had just vanished behind the large snow-glazed mountains, and thousands of beautiful stars glittered on the night sky. The streets were filled with laughing people, gleefully chatting while sipping their warm beverages, and children running around in the snow that covered the ground, seemingly playing catch. The people of the town we were in had gone all out on the decorations, like the lanterns that had large crackling flames burning within them that occasionally launched a few tiny sparks in the direction of me and my sister when we strolled past them. This festivity we were attending was called the Festival of Frost. It was a holiday that was celebrated near the end of the year and was particularly important and well-liked in this cold mountainous town of Spinner's Hollow, which was also the place where Valorie had lived before she became an orphan. The purpose of this celebration was traditionally to ward off evil spirits that were said to live in the frozen caves of the mountains and would emerge around the winter time by either spreading positivity, which these creatures are said to hate, or praying to the gods for protection. My sister Valorie and I were leisurely promenading through the cold, snowy town and buying drinks and snacks at the markets. I'd been looking forward to attending this event for a long time, and Val and I had certainly dressed for the occasion, as I was wearing a brand new pullover and a warm azure cloth cape with a nice-looking snowflake pattern, while Valorie had decided to finally try on a lovely blue corset dress that she had inherited from one of her older sisters, and a pair of white gloves that covered her entire forearms, as well as a pair of fluffy horn warmers, as she liked to call them. But unfortunately, many people looked at us in a rude or demeaning way as we passed by, and that was likely due to our tiefling heritages. This holiday was, after all, particularly religious, and not many gods tend to like things related to the lower planes, and their worshippers were very vocal about that fact. Over the course of the night, we were called various heinous slurs, and after a while of enduring the verbal assault, Valorie couldn't take it anymore, and angrily stormed back to the cabin we were staying in, just a short hike away from the town, with me following suit. The cabin was a pretty nice-looking two-story structure, surrounded by a forest of pine trees, but otherwise completely isolated. The weird old lady that rented it to us kept spouting, "Nehmt euch in Acht vor dem Teufel, der in den Bergen haust," whatever that means. Valorie had knelt down in front of the large fireplace, and I noticed that she was sobbing a little. That last part was a little odd because Valorie was by far one of the toughest and most resilient people I knew. And even though these insults were pretty verbose and mean-spirited, it normally wouldn't have been enough to evoke such a reaction in her. So I sat down next to her and asked, Val, is Is everything okay?
Yeah, it's just, this is the place where I spent my early childhood at, and being insulted for being a tiefling, it brings back a lot of bad memories, okay? She justified her breakdown, trying her best to keep up her confident demeanor.
Oh, would you feel a bit better if you just vented a bit about whatever's on your mind? I offered. Well, sure. I actually came from a decently wealthy household. I had 4 older siblings, but I was the only tiefling in the family because, my mom had an affair with an unknown tiefling fellow I never got to know. My dad didn't particularly like me because of that, and kept reminding me that I was an embarrassment, and told me I'd never be as pretty as my sisters, and that I needed to redeem myself in the eyes of our god, Bahamut. And around the holidays, he'd leave me alone in the house because he didn't want our family to be seen in public with me. She explained, and her words sent chills down my spine. That must have been awful. I can't even imagine having to go through that on such a regular basis. But I do think that it's really impressive that you managed to become such an outgoing, charismatic woman after having experienced that. I commented, and she softly smiled at me. You know, Ed, I actually almost never tell you how damn grateful I am for having met you in the orphanage, she whispered as she pulled me into a hug that was so tight that I almost couldn't breathe for a second. But eventually I hugged her back, which resulted in a very sweet and gentle bonding moment between the two of us. Then, suddenly, all the candles and lanterns that shed light inside the cabin extinguished. The only remaining light was the fireplace that continued to crackle, launching little sparks onto me and Valorie. I rolled my eyes and walked towards the window, only to find that there was now a huge snowstorm raging outside, and that's why almost all the fires went out, presumably. Huh, that's strange, Val mumbled. That storm just appeared out of nowhere. My face was firmly pressed against the glass pane as I squinted my eyes and gazed out into the snow, because I was sure that I had seen movement in the freezing white landscape. Valorie had noticed my behavior and tried to find what I was looking at, but at the end of the day, it was presumably just my very vivid imagination playing tricks on me. But then I saw something move after all. It just looked like a large, blurry blob that almost appeared like it was waving at us. I turned to my adopted sister to see if she'd also noticed the strange being standing out there in the chilling cold night, patiently waiting for us to notice it. Are you seeing what I'm seeing? I asked Val, and she frightfully nodded in response. When I glimpsed back out the window, I realized that whatever was waiting out there had come ever so slightly closer, and I could now see that the creature had a pair of long, spindly horns and was staring back at us. We suddenly heard the crunching of the snow outside and rapid footsteps inching closer and getting louder with every passing second. This thing that had stalked us was running straight towards us, and we knew that we had only limited time to hide from it.
I began to cower underneath the table, and Valorie had sought refuge behind a bookshelf positioned close to the fireplace, as small sparks continued to fly in her direction. But my blood froze in my veins as I heard 3 gentle knocks on the front door. When the creature from the snow noticed that nobody was answering, it seemingly broke down the door and stepped into the cabin, heavily breathing. I broke out into sweats as I saw its black, snow-covered boots from under the table, and the air in the cabin had become increasingly frigid. As I listened closely, the howling wind that was slowly beginning to invade our abode almost began to sound like voices. "Don't worry, sweetie. If you put in a bit of effort, you could become just as normal as your siblings one day." A woman's voice emanated from the wind. "But I don't want to be like my siblings. They're boring." The voice of a little girl followed. "Then I'm afraid it's your own fault if they treat you like this," the older woman proclaimed, sounding a bit disappointed. While I found these strange sounds quite unnerving, Valerie's reaction to them was unfortunately a tad more intense. She briefly flinched in fright, alerting the unexpected visitor to her presence. Its head made a cracking noise as it tilted, and it slowly began to step towards the bookshelf near the fireplace, the floorboards creaking under the creature's weight. As it shambled increasingly closer to my sister, I could make out that the intruder was wearing some kind of dark red coat and had a pair of long metal chains wrapped around its waist. Suddenly, the voices from the wind were back and louder than ever as tiny crystalline snowflakes began to dance inside the cabin. "Papa, why are you always so much meaner to me?" the same young girl from earlier asked. "Because you need to be taught to behave when you grow older, and we have to find you a suitable husband. Knowing how to properly act would make that much easier. Why can't you just act as quiet, modest, obedient, and polite as your sisters? Keep acting like that, and you'll never get married or have your own kids," a male voice complained. The tall, hulking figure of the horned being approached Valerie's hiding spot and toppled the shelf over, revealing the young scarlet-skinned tiefling lady in the blue corset dress, cowering on the ground while trembling in horror. I had never seen her so sickeningly helpless in my life, but there was nothing I could do to combat this behemoth. For a moment, the creature just stood, motionless, as it stared at my sister, before slowly uttering, "Valorie." She looked up into the hollow, sulky eyes of the massive creature. "You were a bad daughter. You could have adapted, but didn't." The monster spoke in a deep, raspy voice as it loosened one of the chains from its waist. I watched in horror as this gruesome thing began to beat her with the chain repeatedly, and she screamed in sheer agony. Despite my statement from earlier, I couldn't bear to see my sister be mistreated like this and charge towards the towering monster. But as I expected, it just led to the creature turning around and also whipping me. You two disobey. You belong in the flames. It grunted as the fireplace suddenly cracked open down the middle, revealing what I could only assume to be some kind of gateway to the 9 hells. Instead of little sparks, tongues of fire began to spill out of the crackling flame, flying directly onto us. I looked over at my sister. Most of her hair had gone a stark white, and she miserably trembled while laying on the wooden floor.
Val, why do you let yourself become so scared of this thing?
I hesitantly asked. Be quiet, the horned monster gurgled as it conjured the flames out of the fireplace.
You are, without a doubt, one of the bravest, strongest, and most resilient women that I've ever laid eyes upon. Don't let those memories scare you. Make them empower you, because you survived all that, and you can definitely survive all this. I comforted her, and she softly smiled at me. But then she noticed that the fire that the fiend was trying to burn her with wasn't as effective as he had hoped.
What is this?
It angrily grunted. One of the perks of being a tiefling, arsehole, Val shouted, while her signature smirk returned to her face. I was insanely proud of her for doing that, and so I got up to avoid getting burnt any further, grabbed Valerie by the wrist, and together we escaped the cabin, making our way through the terrible snowstorm outside, and eventually ending up back in the town where the creature refused to follow us to. The very last I saw of it was it standing behind the pine trees and reluctantly winking at us before vanishing into the deep forest. But maybe that was just my vivid imagination. Val and I eventually decided that we wanted to end the holiday on a high note by doing something fun. And so we built a snowman together and stuck 2 sticks into its head to resemble tiefling horns. And even though some people gave us the stink eye for doing that, we honestly didn't care. No matter what your family, some strangers, or a creepy devil monster say to you, you'll always be awesome the way you are. Never change, Valorie Wraithtaker, I said to her as I put the finishing touches on our snow construct. Thank you so much, Eddie. Happy Festival of Frost, I guess, she responded, gazing back at the beautiful night sky. Real quickly, the next section contains spoilers as to what this monster is and how to defeat it. So if you're a Dungeons & Dragons player and you want to encounter this in your campaign, consider sharing this video with your DM. Alright, thank you. The Krampus is a type of devil that usually emerges around the winter months. They feast on people's negative emotions,
which is why they tend to plague communities that display hate, distrust, or selfishness. But a Krampus' favorite sources of nourishment are fear and guilt, and they will stop at nothing to evoke those feelings in their victims. They carefully stalk their prey in order to learn as much about them and what scares them as possible, and witness them doing something that they aren't too proud of. Soon, the Krampus pays them a visit and reminds them of their often minute wrongdoings, pretending to be some kind of judging entity or punisher of evil, while proceeding to psychologically torment its victim and eventually twisting any source of fire present into a gruesome inferno that seeks to swallow the Krampus target whole. Many people who've survived a Krampus attack report their hair having gone white from fear while in the presence of the fiend, and almost all of them retain devilish marks on their skin caused by the Krampus beating them with special chains forged in the fires of Avernus. And should a target burn to death while feeling the same negative emotions that the Krampus consumes, their souls are said to descend into the 9 hells and eventually become new devils. Yeah, that was it for this scary story. I think this is the best one I've wrote so far. I really love it. And I hope you love the Krampus. It's just the most iconic monster that has something to do with like Christmas and the holidays and wintertime. So I think it only made sense for the Christmassy story to have the stat block of Krampus, which you can see right now. Thank you for watching this far into the video, and special thanks to everyone who watched and liked these videos. Also to the guy who subscribed because I shamelessly self-advertised in a Willowware's comment section. You know who you are if you're watching this. And yeah, have happy holidays, Merry Christmas. Thank you for all the support in 2025. Even if it wasn't that much, it still meant a lot to me. And I hope you have fun with this monster I made for you guys. Real talk, I'm probably one of the only Austrian D&D YouTubers, so if anyone was gonna make the Krampus, it's gonna be me. Anyways, have a great rest of your day or evening or whatever, and goodbye, stay spooky everyone, peace out.